It's our responsibility to help the next generation to succeed. We need to support young men. We need to provide the right environment.
Why do you think that young men struggle with identity and purpose nowadays?
Kind of building a network all the time of people that can help you in life, and I think that's an important thing to remember.
Why do you think we find it so difficult to then express our struggles, and instead we try to carry them alone as men?
The most important decision you can make in life is the friends you surround yourself with. You realise you're not the only one going through these thoughts, you're not the only one going through these experiences.
For yourself, what would be one thing that you would want to tell a young lad who is struggling at the moment or who does feel a bit isolated? Gareth, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
It's a pleasure.
I watched the documentary, and the conversations around young men and the struggles around identity, purpose and belonging really resonated with me, and I think with many of the audience as well it will resonate with, and I'd love to dive into those themes with you. From your experience with a lot of the young men that you've worked with, why do you think that young men struggle with identity and purpose nowadays?
Well, I think that young men like to belong. They like to be part of a tribe, historically. And in some respects, we've lost a lot of organisations that when I was younger, that tribe might have provided. So Cubs or Boys Brigade, or boys might go in the Army Cadets or something like that. And I think often as well now there's real difficulty finding work. So in terms of purpose, as they're getting through school, finishing school, if you haven't got work, then there's a real struggle with who am I? We're quite often defined by our work. It's one of the first conversations you have when you meet people of a certain age. What do you do for a living? And if you haven't got an answer to that because you're unemployed, then there's a blow to self-esteem and confidence. And so I think that's part of the struggle with purpose. And the identity, this is the risk where if you're not part of a positive gang, maybe a football club, then the risk is you join the gang at the end of the road that are heading in a wrong direction. And a lot of vulnerable lads end up doing that.
You touched upon the community and belonging, and obviously you've created one of the biggest communities for us in the last few years. How underappreciated do you think the aspect of community and belonging is for young men to be part of something?
Well, I think a sense of community is something that we've lost a little bit. There's a lot of there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of division, and instead of realising how powerful it is when everybody comes together, we're squabbling about a lot of other things, really. And I think one of the things that we learned from the time with the England team was that the beauty of England playing is it does bring everybody together. Nan, people from down the street. You kind of remember where you were when you were watching a lot of the games. Whether you were at the pub or you were at someone's house or whatever you were doing. And I remember that in COVID as well, where community, all of a sudden people were looking out for each other. They were doing shopping for the old lady that lived down the road, or they were helping their neighbours out. So it's in us to do those things. And we've got to get back to that with some of these challenges where we need to support young people. We need to support young men. We need to provide the right environment for them to succeed.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was a big part that I noticed as well is the right environment. And obviously a lot of the work was with education and around that. Do you think we're sort of underprepared in teaching young men about adult life and what happens after school? And where do you go after school? What do you do? Especially if you don't have a community or someone to look up to.
Yeah, well, I think that... do you think we do that well?
Not really. I think we're sort of prepared with the maths, the English, the science, but we're never taught about the mental health aspect or what we're going to do after this, how we're going to use this, or other things that we can learn and take a trade on. It's just, there's sort of one set path, and how can we, navigate it after that? What do we do with those things? That's my thoughts on it.
Well, it feels as though schools are under a lot of pressure to deliver academic results. And if you're not academically minded, then that's a real problem for boys, because I think statistically boys are behind on academic results anyway. They're more likely to get excluded from the class because, quite often they like to get up and walk about and perhaps not able to regulate their emotions as well. And then things like apprenticeships that used to be a given, a great way to find work, seem to be frowned upon. It seemed to be that, when I was growing up, 5% of people went to university. It's now 50%. So that's a huge shift. And whilst it's good for some people, the realities of learning a trade, taking an apprenticeship, getting experience in a working environment where you start to earn a wage, you start to feel differently about yourself. I don't know why we're not more positive about that. It feels to me that we're not giving lads skills. If they're not academically minded, what alternative are we providing? And I think school should be part of that, and then further education can be in a different route. It doesn't have to be an academic course at a university, because a lot of lads historically have done manual jobs that I'm assuming AI aren't going to take, but we've sort of frowned upon it as a society, and I don't really understand why that is.
I'm the same. I don't understand it. My brother's an electrician, and these jobs are so brilliant, and if we were taught that there is another route, then it would be really useful as well. And I think that when we don't have that idea of what we do next, it makes us isolated. It makes a lot of us struggle, especially as men, and then we don't know what to do with that struggle. As men, you've worked with a lot of men under pressure, and yourself, experiences. Why do you think we find it so difficult to then express our struggles, and instead we try to carry them alone as men?
Well, I think there's quite a bit of inherited thinking with that from previous generations. So I don't think my granddad or my dad would have talked about their emotions, really. They'd have probably been brought up to do the opposite, actually, right? You're a man, you've got to carry that burden, you've got to provide, and there's nothing wrong with being the provider, but it's also perfectly acceptable to chat and talk and be more open. So I know I get a lot from, a group of dads that we all met, our kids were at school together, we have a little book club. It's an excuse for a beer and a night out, really, but we chat as well. And I've got a group that I play golf with and a group I play paddle tennis with, and we're starting to open up more. I can see that conversations are happening that maybe 10 years ago wouldn't have happened. And guys need to do that, because historically we've bottled that up, and sadly that's led to some guys taking their lives. The suicide rate of men is very, very high at a young age. So it's good for people to share, it's good to chat, because also then you realise you're not the only one going through these thoughts, you're not the only one going through these experiences. When I've shared things with other coaches from other sports, for example, you realise, okay, so they've got the same problems that we've got, and actually it's really reassuring. And I think the more people talked about those things, they'd realise that what they're experiencing is far more common than they might feel.
And how important is it to be the person in the group, the person who shares their struggles as well then? Like you said, when you sort of speak about it, other people instantly shoulders drop and they speak about it too.
Well, somebody's got to go first. So I think it's whatever you're comfortable with, really. Some people might not want to be the first to share, and they might need to feel a bit more confident of the group, and that's part of joining any group, isn't it? You kind of find your way in and work out the hierarchy and the pecking order, and hopefully people, I know the groups I'm with, some people will talk more than others, some people are more willing to share, some people never shut up. So there's all sorts of different characters, but what people are saying is, if somebody's got a problem, they're there for them, and they're there to share it with. And I think that's a huge and really important support.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of links back to obviously being the first person, and obviously there's a lot more ability to do that online, social media, and the presence that people have. How important is it for there to be the positive role models online, as well as obviously, because so many people can access role models that they see, how important is it for the positive role models to be online as well and talk about these things?
Definitely. Well, guys that are doing the sorts of things you are, delivering positive messages is so important, because there is a gap for a lot of lads. There's a lot of families without a dad at home. And although single mums are doing a brilliant job, very often men need a male role model as well. So they're not finding that necessarily at school, because there's not so many male teachers, and we don't have youth clubs like we used to. So people are looking online for help and support, and that is the Wild West at times. You just don't know what you're going to find. So all the extreme characters that you find in the outside world, they're all online, but you've got to choose well. And it's really important that the people delivering the right sort of messages that we want, the positive messages, the balanced messages, that their voices are heard. And then there's a responsibility for young men to make good decisions. The most important decision you can make in life is the friends you surround yourself with, the group, the gang that you become a part of. It's either a positive gang that are there to help you and they're really going to be there when you need them, or there's other types of gangs that are not going to be there when you're up against it.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a big thing that you're mentioning here, like the community aspect, linking back to finding the right people around you and having those role models. I know you mentioned about how more lads have a phone than they have a father figure at times, and that obviously can play a big impact on a person, because as a young man myself without my dad, you're sort of looking for someone to look up to. And I think that what you mentioned there, having the positive role models online where we have a lot of access, is so powerful, and especially people with authority as well, because it shows that you can achieve that too. Yeah.
I think that I think all older people would remember people in their lives. So as a man, I think you remember men that had a big influence at certain points in your life that was really important. Might have been an uncle, might have been a teacher, might have been a coach, might have been a youth worker, could be anybody. But we've got to remember how that was for us and sort of pay that back, really, and make sure, because we're not very good at that as well as men. We don't volunteer as much as women do, and we can, it's our responsibility to help the next generation, really.
And I think that's so powerful, just showing people that, you can help them even if you're not a father figure. Just having someone to look up to is so useful. So for yourself, what would be one thing that you would want to tell a young lad who is struggling at the moment, or who does feel a bit isolated?
Well, I would say that it's more normal than he might think, because I think all guys go through those periods as they're going through puberty, finding out about their body, finding out about the world, finding out what they might want to do for a job. Am I going to get a girlfriend? There's all these hurdles and questions that you have that are completely normal. Everybody's been through it. But when you're going through it, you think you're the only one. And that's why sometimes it's actually really helpful. Like, a role model doesn't have to be 20 years older than you. It can be somebody that's 2 years older that's just been through exactly the processes you're going through of trying to find work or trying to find what you want to do for a career. So I think young lads should also remember that there's a big part to play in that. Somebody that's 2 years older than you at school, how did you do that? You're kind of building a network all the time of people that can help you in life, and I think that's an important thing to remember.
Mm-hmm. No, I really appreciate that. I think the power of the network and having people around you is what we need in life. Community, as you said, belonging to something. So thank you for that answer. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate everything that you're doing for young men who are struggling. We need more of it. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, who have been the people that have influenced you maybe in the last couple of years the most?
For me, it would be my older brother. He took on the reins when my dad sadly passed, and he's just, taken on everything and has been able to just support me in everything that I'm doing, push me on, keep me playing football, and just allow me to try and do things that I want to do now. So, credit to him for taking on the role. He's been an absolute legend.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Well, and it's a good example that, you know, this person is going to come in many different guises. You know, in the next few years, you'll have listened to your brother enough and you'll be looking for somebody else, you know, but choosing that person well and who you choose to take information from is one of the most important decisions you'll have. So, great credit to your brother for doing that. Yeah.
No, he's a legend. I appreciate him. And obviously, there's a lot of footballers that I look up to, as we all do, and yourself creating the communities that I said you've done earlier has helped us a lot. Football, belonging to something, my teams I support. Maybe not at the moment, but it's helped. So I think having those role models and people to look up to has been a great help. And I think if we can keep doing that and keep talking about it openly, it will allow young men to find the right people and the right communities to belong to, and that's all we can hope for.
Yeah, and part of that community that you've just experienced is you've got to be there for them in the bad times as well as the good, right?
Yeah, definitely. You can't always be glory hunting. You've got to be there through it all.